Hey guys, it's Jaguar here, and this is a series of conversations between myself and some of the women pioneers of dance music, brought to you by Beatport and Ballantines Scotch whisky. So Ballantines True Music has given a platform to over 300 artists, with 122 of those being female, across 50 events in 16 countries in the last 7 years. Through True Music, Ballantines is committed to representing, supporting and broadcasting global inclusive music culture from around the world. So I can't wait for you to hear today's conversation, and in tune with Ballantines' commitment to inclusivity and self-expression. Today I'm talking to two DJs and producers that are prolific, wise and powerful. Rebekah and Saoirse, welcome. How are you guys? You good?
Good, thanks. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. Really excited to have you here. Thank you, first of all, I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I feel like there's a lot we're going to cover today. I'm really excited. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of women watching this will look up to you. And I certainly do. And I think it'd be a great place to start is, when you guys were starting out, let's go back to that journey, how that was for you. And yeah, when you were coming up, did you have any female role models as well? Saoirse, should we start with you?
Sure. I guess electronic music wise, when I started buying records when I was about 14, 15, I was actually listening to hard house. So people like Lisa Lashes and Anne Savage and these kind of like hard house DJs, which kind of were the only female DJs around back then. Were, hugely inspirational to me, and then artists like Bjork and so forth. But, when I was kind of getting into electronic music, there was, in Ireland anyway, the kind of music that we were being fed, there was very few and far between when it came to like female inspirations in dance music. It was very kind of older men. So yeah, it always just felt a little bit of, I didn't feel any kind of relation to those people up there on the stage to myself. But yeah, I definitely had I was a huge fan of these kind of super in your face, brash, hard house DJs.
Love that. And Rebekah, what about you?
I think I didn't really have like role models as such, but I definitely had inspirational DJs that I kind of was looking up to in a way, or they inspired me. So people like Scott Bond, who made DJing be like accessible. I thought if he can do it, and it's like we kind of knew him, I was like, it's kind of open to everybody. That's the feeling I had with DJing. Yeah, like the girls that were around. I mean, I'm from the Midlands, so it was like Lisa Lashes, Anne Savage, Lisa Pinup. But then on the techno side, it was like Gail San, and she was just a badass because she was like, she would play 3 decks and spin backs and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, she was really cool. But I think mainly it was the guys. So it's like probably like Dave Clark, Derek Carter as well. That really inspired me back in the day.
Sick. Nice. And yeah, we're here chatting, sort of rounding off Women's History Month. And yeah, we've been talking to women who contribute to our scene like yourselves. And yeah, it feels like kind of been a weird month this year anyway, kind of coinciding with conversations and protests about women's rights and just general safety for women in the UK, at least, around the tragic murder of Sarah Everard. And I was wondering what your take on everything that's been going on at the moment so far is.
Yeah, the Sarah Everard story is really tragic, but I think one thing that really worried me from that situation was that, it takes a white woman to be kidnapped from a wealthy neighborhood and murdered in such a kind of brutal and horrific way for people to actually start listening. All these damning reports start coming out that 97% of women have been harassed or assaulted, and 2 women a week are murdered in the UK and so forth. And it came to a shock to many, but to us women, we were like, yeah, like this is not a shock to us. We kind of been saying like, where have you been? And I think that I felt kind of very sad when I started thinking about it more, that it's just become kind of such a societal norm to accept that, like, the second you step out your door, you're in danger from either being harassed or assaulted or, you know, just accosted or whatever, especially in nightlife. You know, I think it's just a very kind of, it's quite normalized now. And I think that's one of the saddest things about it.
Yeah, so true. Rebekah, what about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I don't know too much about what's been going on. I don't tend to watch the news so much, so I did a little bit more research. And yeah, it's absolutely tragic, and that the feeling I got through the press and what I was reading was that it could have been prevented, because the guy that's now going to be in court for it and is accused, he was like caught flashing like a few months ago, and like obviously the signs and the alarm bells are already there for these kind of perpetrators, and it's like, you know, with the culture that we're in, it's like this sort of behavior, it just grows and leads on to these horrific crimes. So I think it's really about challenging the very small things to then prevent the big things from happening. And that's the kind of feeling I've got, and what I'm hoping that people realise more.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, it is a weird one, isn't it? Like Saoirse, as you were saying, it's not, as women who are, you know, more prone to sexual assault and awful things happening like this, it's not a shock that most women have experienced some sort of level of this. So it sparked a lot of interesting conversations, and I think we just need to keep talking about it and pushing. And it's not exactly a lot to ask for women to be able to walk home safely at night and nothing bad happened to them, right?
And I think that some of the things that happen in nightlife are so much more accepted than they would be if it was on the street. For instance, like someone, you know, puts their hands in between my legs or grabs my arse or something, like that feels like if someone did that on the street, they would be arrested and like have a, you know, kind of sex pest like history on their record or whatever. Whereas that kind of stuff happens in nightclubs and stuff all the time. And why is it considered different? It's not as serious when it's in that situation. I feel like that's something that's very kind of prevalent.
100%. And I guess that kind of leads us on to, Rebekah, the work you've been doing with your For the Music campaign, kind of, sparking around last year when there was a lot of conversations like this when dance music kind of, I guess, electronic music's sort of Me Too movement, you know, sparking after Eric Murillo and Derek May cases coming to light of sexual assault. And yeah, I'd love to hear, Rebekah, for people who might not have heard about what you're doing, can you tell us about your work within this and I guess how it's been going? Because that was sort of autumn last year, right? We're now in end of March. So yeah.
Yeah, the campaign was really like the backlash against all of the allegations that were coming out of Eric Murillo and Derek May, and obviously there's a lot more in the EDM scene. It's just all over, to be honest. But it wasn't really those situations. It was how like the scene was reacting to it. There's still a lot of victim blaming. There's still a lot of inequality when we talk about women DJs and women artists next to male artists. And I just saw that, and I just saw this kind of like this huge divide within the scene. And it was more about that, really. It was more about like, okay, well, we need to kind of get this more balanced. So yeah, the campaign started, it was to raise awareness. It was to, have a website which gives a platform to the victims to share their testimonials anonymously. And I think now I'm in the next stage where I'm putting more of an action plan together. So when we do open the clubs again, hopefully they're going to have a few protocols in place and we can make them a little bit safer. And yeah, I think the campaign has been really, really good, and it's had a lot of support, but it really needs a lot more support, and that shows where the community is at. And I think we all need to look out for one another. We all need to be responsible, and you know, it's just like women talking about this shouldn't really be a thing because it's a man's issue. You know, it's men that are the perpetrators, but it always seems to end up in our lap again, like us fighting for it, when really the men should be teaching and trying to get through to other men that this just isn't acceptable behavior anywhere, you know. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so true. And I guess it's hard as well because when it is like these big name DJs who are them, you know, some of these things have been going on for years and they were only coming to light in you know, in the mainstream that they'd sexually assaulted countless women. And when it is someone who is like super famous, as we saw with when people were sharing, you know, when Eric tragically died, it was also really, I felt really conflicted because then I would see like loads of male DJs celebrating his life and posting about him, but also just completely glossing over like these serious, damaging, evil allegations. So how do we deal with that sort of situation when it's like a superstar has done something awful?
I think we need to see people as people and take them off the pedestal that we're building these superstar DJs to be on. The whole culture around, you know, the rock and roll groupie culture that we're in with dance music that's come from, you know, the late 80s, 90s. I just think it's outdated now. And I think if we want equality and we that's what we're trying to get, it's we have to challenge these things within our scene, you know, like it's just because someone made a good track once back in like 30 years ago, you know, it doesn't mean that he should be allowed to be let off from, you know, potentially like the allegations say, you know, rape and assaulting women just because he made a track that we all dance to on the dance floor. It's just, you know, no one should be above the law in this case, in our scene. You know, we're all accountable.
Sis, would you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think you just have to like look at the facts, and people need to really question themselves when, you know, you have multiple women in different cities around the world, like who have no gain and no benefit for coming out and telling their story about, you know, Derek May or whatever, like, and then still not to be believed. Like, we really need to question that type of rhetoric in the world. Like, why do you think why are you so convinced that that's more of an absolutely crazy coincidence than actually something that's true? Because like you said, someone made some music 30 years ago or whatever. That's the thing that really shocks me the most, is when, like, how much do you need in order for it to be believed, you know?
Yeah, so true. And my next question around this is, when someone is sort of, I guess we're talking about cancel culture here as well, like when someone does something and they are cancelled by the scene or for whatever reason, you know, if they genuinely are sorry and they want to come back from this, like, how can they come back, and should they come back?
Okay, sorry. There is definitely room for people to make amends, depending on the severity of the crime that's taken place. If they're a known rapist for the last 30 years, I think there's no place. I don't think there's going to be any way that person is going to be reformed in any way, shape, is. And I don't even like cancel culture. I think the cancel culture thing is like a term for perpetrators to then become the victims. So I'd rather not even have cancel culture be a thing, because it's almost like we start feeling sorry for perpetrators and they can abuse that situation too. There has to be that accountability regardless.
Yeah, I think, you know, Rebekah hit on the button there. It's like, it just really depends on the context. You know, there's hugely different variations of what people are cancelled for. And I think that also the thing that needs to really, really considered is who the victim is in it as well. Like, you know, what harm they've been caused and what they want from a situation. A lot of the time, some of these things with cancelling and so forth, there is ongoing situations with the victim and whatever's happened in the background. And I think people need to be very careful about what they're pushing out there that isn't going to actually harm the victim even more, because I think that does tend to happen when a huge kind of campaign arises. So they need to be the priority as well, I think.
100%. Thanks, guys. Okay, I want to move on here, and I want to talk about sisterhood within women in music, because personally, like, I feel like there's a real feeling of solidarity, and I don't know, for me personally, I've got a lot of friends who are DJs and producers coming up, and there seems to be a really nice circle. And I also feel like I'm able to reach out to, you know, people like you guys who have been doing it for much longer, and there feels like this like tenderness between women a little bit in the scene. And Saoirse, I love seeing, you know, when you play with Shanti Celeste and Moxie and Peach. I think I saw you guys play at Glastonbury like a couple of years ago. Yeah. And it's just so great for me to see like 4 women at the top of their game, just like having the best time, playing the best music, and people feeling it. And like, I wanted to ask you, how important is it for you to have a network of women in music that you can turn to and just, you know, be on this journey with as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a really nice safety net, I feel. I think that being a woman touring around can be just it can cause like a number of different anxious feelings, especially when you're traveling to, you know, places around the world where you just don't really know what's kind of waiting for you. But having a group of women that you can turn to and who are kind of experiencing the same thing. And the thing that like really excites me and the girls when we play together is like, you know, there's absolutely no doubt when you put women on a lineup at the front, you have more women come to the show and they're at the front as well, like dancing. Like you see it like instantly. And, you know, if promoters want to see more women in their nightclubs and festivals, so they should book more women. And every time, you know, we play together, we get hundreds of messages from people, and some of them are saying stuff like, you know, after seeing you guys up there, it inspired me or made me feel powerful. Now I'm going to start DJing, and start producing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's, you know, I think that's kind of like proof in the pudding that bringing more women into the fold, you need actually more women to be visible, like in the industry already. So, yeah, I think it's super important to have a good kind of network of women around you if it makes you feel better.
Yeah, 100%. Rebekah, do you feel the same?
Yeah, I've always been fairly alone. So I've been doing lots of stuff alone. Like I've come from this sort of background of, you know, women were a threat and we're all in competition with each other. We're not in competition with the men because obviously the men are better. So,
I roll.
That was the messages I got throughout my early days. So I kind of held back from reaching out to women and supporting them, or, you know, allowing them to support me in any way. And I think from doing my back-to-back session with Paula Temple and now mentoring some women as well, it's definitely opened up me to be connected to this part of me that I'd kind of closed off. So now, it's like I get to see them not as a threat anymore. I get to see them as my techno sisters, and it's really good to see women just making some incredible music, you know, like from doing like this mentoring thing, I got like 1,000 people apply for me to mentor them, and I picked 5 or 6. But to hear the different like take that women would have on their music was really refreshing compared to some of the other genders in the scene. So I think it's really important that we give a platform to women to come through, because they have their own unique styles and influences. And for me, dance music is like a melting pot of inspiration and influence, and you know, we need these voices, we need this music. So it's super important.
Yeah, 100%. And that's really interesting that you've said, you know, like a few years ago, towards the beginning of your career, it was women being pit against each other and competing with each other. Whereas now it's like the opposite. It's all it's all togetherness. Like, why do you think that's changed? Do you think because there are more women doing it now? And
I think it still exists. I think like women still get compared to each other, even if they play completely different music. Like, you know, oh, I like that DJ, but this one's better. It's like they're just two completely different people, but we don't get compared to men, really, you know. I think that's still a big issue, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah, it is true. And it could be like, and then not only do you get compared against women that are like play completely different music, then you also get compared on how you look as well. So, you know, and then obviously we're back into, you know, the beauty myth and on all of that kind of, you know, the structure of our society. So yeah, we're trying to dismantle it the best that we can. And I think that is, you know, by, you know, forcing yourself like to think the opposite in these situations, that we're not afraid. There is room for everybody. It's room for everybody, you know, like if you're true to yourself and you're true to your artistic endeavors, then I think that they'll, you know, you create your own platform, and that's true whether you're male or female.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, 100%. And I wanted to go into the subject of imposter syndrome as well, because I think everyone gets it, where you just think, oh, how did I get here after I got lucky here? I certainly get it quite a lot. And I think everyone gets it. But I think it does feel like it's very common within women as well. You know, especially things like negative comments on streams and stuff, that does not help either. And I was wondering if, you know, either of you guys have suffered with this and how you deal with it, if so.
Rebekah, I'm sure you have experienced that quite a bit.
Hit me.
Yeah, like the first time when I got signed to, when I got my big break with CLR back in 2012, I was the only female to come onto the label. So I knew at that point, it was like the labels at that time, they were looking for the girls to put on to balance the labels. So I knew that it was partly because of that. And then obviously partly because I made a couple of bomb tracks as well. So, but, you know, I ended up in Berlin alone and I was like, whoa, how did I get here? And then the imposter syndrome started seeping in. I didn't feel really good enough. I didn't think I felt I deserved it. I allowed guys to tell me that I didn't deserve it as well. So I was allowing all this information to come into my energy field, and I don't know, it made me work harder. And then as I worked harder and, you know, I succeeded more and I took stock of what I was doing, I kind of overcome that, because I'm like, I know how hard I work. I know that I'm, you know, pretty decent in the studio nowadays. And, you know, all the successes, it's like, I try and look at those rather than look at the lack of. I try and look at what I have done. And I think just keeping an eye on those things really keeps things in check. As for the negative comments, I mean, at some point I've just heard everything. I mean, like you just get to hear every comment and it always ends up being the same. And the worst things that could have been said about me have already been said now. So I'm kind of like over it. And as long as I know in myself that I've done a good job and I did it to the best of my ability, it doesn't really matter about people's opinions. And it's more about them than it is about me. So, but you know, it took a long time to get there in that thought process. Really.
Yeah. God, people are just the worst sometimes, aren't they? Saoirse, what about you? Have you experienced imposter syndrome as well?
Yeah, for sure. Still do. I mean, I think you're just, especially like coming from where me and Rebekah came from, I think we came from a similar era. And, you know, it literally was only in the last like 5 years or so, we start seeing a lot more women, you know, on the scene. So constantly feeling like in order to get to the same level of success, like I guess if you were to deem success as like how many shows you're doing and whatever, you kind of have to be like way louder or way more, you know, you way more to show for yourself than like a male DJ who's maybe like doing the same thing or whatever. You know, when you look at some of the most famous kind of female DJs from the past 10 years, like they all have had something in which they had this like particular character, you know, whereas you don't really know much about most of the other male DJs at all, you know what I mean? And I feel like that always made me feel a little bit like, unless I have, you know, I need to be mouthy, or I need to like, you know, be kind of have like some sort of image or something. I actually can't just let music speak for itself sometimes, because you're trying to battle them like to get to this place or whatever, you know what I mean? And I feel that that's a real thing that's on women more so than males, in order to kind of, get recognized. And with the birth of, you know, Instagram, there's huge onus on your image as well. And that makes me feel quite like imposter syndrome, because I've never really been someone who is very, you know, about my image or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of just like trying to fit who you are as a person within a huge pot of so many different like characters. And sometimes you feel like where's the music in all of this, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Rebekah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add and about the Instagram thing as well. And women get crucified for that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have like, it's something that's been really bugging me for the last, I don't know, month or two. So the campaign, it's like I get so much like negativity from some of the male artists, because they don't want to commit to it. They don't want to support it, because they feel that women on Instagram, the women DJs are abusing their position and their power to exploit themselves sexually. And I'm like, how can you compare that against someone that's had alleged rape crimes against them? And it's like, we get rewarded for, you know, having a brand and having an image, but then we also get, crucified for it at the same time. So it's like we're just like in a no-win situation, and just being female, you know, you're overtly sexy, you know. So it's like it's a real hard sort of place to sort of navigate really with the Instagram.
Yeah, like I find it really it really pisses me off when, you know, women who actually just want to be sexy, like go do it.
What's wrong with that?
But then you get crucified for like, well, that's why you're where you are. Can't you be sexy and a talented artist? Is that not allowed? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a thing that like women have to, you know, every woman will tell you when they post a picture or whatever themselves, they think, oh, is that going to look a bit too sexy? Or am I going to, you know, are people going to think I'm doing this? So I get, you know what I mean? And we have all of these kind of struggles of just being who we are, and being afraid that we're going to be shamed by men, basically.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Like, of course you can be sexy and successful, but it's like the system just tells you otherwise. Yeah. And I guess we've spoken a lot about like the struggles and, you know, how it can be difficult. And what I'd like to, you know, talk about here is how can we actually achieve equality, and, you know, so we don't have to do panels that are centered around the struggles, even though it's quite good to let it all out sometimes. But yeah, Rebekah, what about you?
I think like the visibility is a really good way. So the more women and minorities that are like throughout the scene, the better, because then it starts becoming about equality. And yeah, just like, you know, stop putting DJs on huge pedestals, you know, like if you like go out and dance to them, great. They're not like they shouldn't be your like undying heroes, you know, like it's like they're still people after all, so we have to treat people like people. But obviously, you know, that's going to be, it is difficult. It's still going to have the rock star syndrome going on. But yeah, I think really that's it. I don't know, maybe Saoirse, you've got some idea.
Sure. I mean, I think similarly, like, you know, I think there needs to be more women on lineups, and it needs to be intersectional. And, you know, if you want diversity in clubs and in festivals, which a lot of promoters are always complaining about, you know, we have too much blokes at the party or whatever, prove it with your lineups. I think like promoters who say stuff like, especially now, so, you know, oh, it's a bit of a risk to book more on less a known night. Well, now is your time, because like tickets are flying out the door. Like there is no excuse to going back to that same old structure of, you know, old white male who's been around for 20 years on all these lineups. Like you could put a dead horse on a lineup now and it would sell out. Do you know what I mean? And you don't have to, because there's a plethora of like talented women out there if you just open your eyes. And I think now is the easiest time to do it. So just do it, you know?
Yeah. Do you think, when we do get back into clubs, do you think we're going to see these changes because we've actually had time to stop, talk about it, make the plans? Are we going to see action?
I think that like there will be some people who are set in their ways and things won't really change there, or there might be a bit more like tokenism or whatever. But I know within my kind of circles and a lot of my friends and promoter friends or whatever, like there's definitely a lot of changes and things being considered, and artists, rather than always taking everything and taking high fees, like really considering their place and what they're doing. Do I actually need this show? Would someone do this show better? Or, you know, actually, do I need this fee? And maybe like it could be spread out more evenly or whatever, you know? I think that's something that needs to happen. Like it can't just be one person's responsibility. It kind of needs to be the whole industry as a whole, whether it's the platforms, the promoters, the artists, kind of the agents, everyone. It needs to put an effort into it to actually see some proper change.
Yeah. Rebekah, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think with the last year or so, with the BLM movement as well, I'm just hoping that, the diversity is going to be there when we come back. And and obviously, you know, with the harassment and assault, making small changes for promoters in clubs. We're going to make it super easy for them as well with the action plan that I've got in mind. And I just think we should come back to something, one, really exciting, two, really diverse, and then let's see what happens in the future.
100%. Yeah, I think like so many things we touched upon today, and again, like it's all about visibility as well. And like I think Saoirse, the first time I met you was at a queer women in music panel, and like how great is that was a panel that queer women could go to, or anyone could go to, and learn about queer women in music if they wanted to. And I think we need to have these conversations because it will hopefully inspire people who might have looked at lineups where it's old white guys who were big 20 years ago.
Yeah, making things accessible. Like, you know, Rebekah's saying she's doing mentoring. I'm kind of doing like a DJ school for, you know, women and minorities and stuff. And I think people who have platforms being, you know, offering skill sharing and so forth is going to be a big way for, you know, women and minorities and so forth to come through and, you know, feel like they have a role model and a way to get into the industry or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I've just got 2 questions left for you. One of them is, there might be a lot of up and coming artists watching this. So it'd be great to hear a piece of advice from each of you that you think is, this is the great bit of advice that you wish you knew when you were starting out.
I would say stick to what you love. So stick to the music that you really, really feel. And go to school and study. Go to college. If you want to make music, go to college. It gives you a lot of confidence, and 2, you'll have like a foundation to work with. So that would be 2 advices really. Don't follow the fashion of what's hot, and just stick to what's in your heart, basically.
Great advice. And Saoirse, what about you?
Yeah, I think don't look at what everyone else is doing. I think try and figure out who you are, what makes you you, like what makes you unique, and then build on that. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that one thing I always really struggled with especially because I hung around with a load of, I guess, blokes who DJ'd and wrote music. Like I just really found it nearly like a kind of out of principle. Like I didn't want to like ask for help because I wanted to show that I could do it myself. But actually, I wish I did now. I wish I had asked for help a lot more. I think I would have, got to places quicker or whatever. I think that's something that you should feel okay doing, asking for help, whatever. Once it's kind of with the right thing in mind or whatever.
Yeah.
Reach out to people could help you and see if they'll help.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you, guys. This has been so much fun. My final question is a big one. Are you ready for it? It might blow your mind. Okay, here we go. The question is, in light of everything we've spoken about, in light of your work as powerful women in our industry, what legacy do you want to be remembered for? It's a big question, I told you. So, do you want to go first?
I have been working in electronic music for nearly 20 years now. No, Jesus Christ, yeah. Not like working, but, in it. And I just want to make sure that it's not in vain, that I have made an impact on some people that will take it to whatever they do. I'm not looking for like notoriety, like on a level in which everyone needs to be like, wow, she's amazing, but more so that like it's actually done things for people personally, whether that's through mentoring, through DJing, through helping people out, through lifting people, through radio or whatever, and giving other people a platform and stuff like that. Because I think that's one thing I really wish I had when I was younger. Someone who kind of I felt was just like a role model, really taking me along the way. Yeah, I think I would just be really upset if I did, like, I kind of worked in this thing for 40 years and then just fizzled away. Do you know what I mean? That would kill me.
I'm sure that won't be the case at all. And Rebekah, what about you? What legacy do you want to leave behind?
I think like I'd hopefully just leave some bomb tracks. So, like when my sound becomes retro in 20 years time, people can still pull them out and still go, oh, that's a banger. So
yeah.
I feel like people to kind of know me for the music, and then whatever they want to make their minds up about me afterwards, I'm okay with. So yeah, it would be nice. Like obviously, it would be nice to leave a little bit of a legacy for women to have a safer space. That's 100% my feelings. But let's see.
Yeah, amazing. Great answers. There we go. Thank you so much, both of you. This was really insightful and interesting. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Have a nice day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.